Good morning, everyone. At Gittavach. It is Sunday morning, first day Slichus for the Ashkenazim. And last night we said, Anashama lach la'guf shalach chusa alam alach. Anashama lach la'guf alach aselaman shemacha. It's all about the neshama. It's all about bringing the neshama, fixing the issues with the neshama, and getting the neshama closer to Hakadosh Baruch Hu. It's all about the neshama. And you know, I call this group Kala Neshama because as we said, the Neshama is the same words, same letters as Mishnah. The Mishnayos, even if you don't always know what the Mishnayos are talking about, because the Mishnayos are like each Mishnah is so deep. Was in the Gemara goes and explains, and it's into a Torah Shabbat Peh, as we discussed. But the Mishnayos are it talks to your neshama, and it soothes and it heals the neshama. And now we're in that time of year, and I know her should be a wonderful year ahead. We should make the most of the May Rachim, the May Harachimim and Slichos, and to maximize our experience on the May Hadin, and for a wonderful year ahead with BS Mashiach Sekina B'Mheri Mino. Amen. Today is Perek Zion of Seches Peah. Tomorrow is the eighth Perek of Peah. That's the end of Peah. We're starting to Mai on Tuesday. The coming events, very very interesting, and we should be able to finish the Mai time for Shoshana next week, if I'm counting correctly. I hope. Um, Today's shir is sponsored by Nishmas Aaron Nachman ben Simcha HaKohen, Yeshua Mordechai ben Shepsil, Bracha Sarah Bashmolei ben Moshe ben Yosef, and Moshe Yitzchak ben Rav Shraga Feivel. May the Neshamas all have an aliyah. And Rafu Shlema for Ada Sarah Bas Leah, Besot Shar Chol Yisrael. Amen. Perek Zion of Mishnayos Peah continues with the laws of Shikha, as we spoke about in the previous Perek. It starts off Mishnah Aleph. Kol Zayis Sheyesh Lo Shem Basada. If you have an olive tree that has a reputation in the field as being very distinct, this olive tree has been around for 100 years, and this is the olive tree that is so special because olives, and there's a whole story behind the tree, whatever the story is. Afilu Kesayis Hanatufa B'Shaito, even if it has even, even if it has such a quality that only sometimes, such as an olive tree that drips oil during the time that it is fruitful. At times it produces olives that are so juicy that oil drips from them even without being squeezed. That's a Usually you have to like pick the olives off and then put them into a press and go through the whole process of extracting the oil. Here, this tree is so chashuv that the oil just drips out of the olives while it's still on the tree. And if someone forgets to harvest such a tree, that is not considered shikha because the tree has such a unique feature. The owner will remember it, and it's not considered shikha. The Mishnah explains this one. What when were these words? What case is this talking about? Bishmo, when it's unique because of its name, of myself, or because of its productivity, of Makomo, or because of its location in the orchard. There's some unique identifier about this tree that that makes it stand out from the rest. You could have 100 trees in the field, and this one is unique, and the other ones are standard, and this one will not have shikha will not apply to, whereas the other ones it will, because this is special. The Mishnah continues to explain, Bishmo, unique because of its name means that it produces so much oil. Shahaya Shechuni O Baishan, that is called by its own distinct name, such as Shechoni, one that pours oil, or Balshani, one that shames. Shaming that it surrounds, meaning that it puts to shame all the other trees in the area, in the field, that they don't produce as much um, um, top quality produce like this tree does. But my so what does it mean? My so means that's unique because of its name, because of its productivity. Excuse me. Shehu Osa Harbe, that it produces many more owls than the trees around it. From Como, and unique because of its location. What does that mean? Shehu Omed Besad Hagas or Besad Hapirza, that it is in a memorable spot. It stands next to a wine press, next to a gap in the fence, or some sort of landmark, and makes it special because of that. So what was shot? So the Mishnah continues. The shar zasim and all the other olive trees, shnayim shechicha, ushlosha ena shechicha, and the um. So as we discussed previously, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel had a machlokas what was considered shechicha. Beis Hillel said 2 is not, and 3 is shecha, and Beis Shammai said 3 is not, and 4 is shecha. So obviously, halacha was set up as Beis Hillel, and that's why the Mishnah says over here that Shnayim shecha, that 2 is considered shecha, ushlosha ena shecha. Sorry, I messed that up before. Beis Hillel said that two trees, 2 bundles are shecha, and 3 is not. And Beis Shammai said that 3 are shecha and 4 are not. The Bible has to keep 4. I messed up before. I'm a little tired still from sleeping. My apologies. So this Mishnah was set up according to the following, to the Shita Beis Hillel, which became halacha, that 2 is considered shecha and 3 is not considered shecha, and they could go back for them. Rabbi Yossi Omer ein shecha zaysim. Rabbi Yossi says that the rule of shecha does not apply to olive trees, because olive trees are so rare that they're considered distinctive enough, even that they will certainly be remembered, and therefore they do not need all these identifiers. So the question is, when was this halacha said? Rabbi Yossi said this halacha after the Roman Emperor Hadrian destroyed much of Eretz Yisrael and eliminated most of its olive trees. Olive trees became so rare that if a farmer had an olive tree, he would certainly remember to harvest it, and therefore shikha would not apply in those cases. But this does not apply anymore nowadays, because when olive trees are common and plentiful, then the laws of shikha would apply. You know, Hadrian and also heard this, who were both Romans. They were Yisrael, they were terrible people, but for the rest of the world, they were considered the great leaders that they were, and were often at odds with the nations of the world as to who was considered a great leader and who was not. Because most of the time they were persecuting us and our ancestors, and not the other way around. And therefore, we kind of feel that these people were wonderful people, and we have other opinions to say about that. Mishnah Beis, Zayis Shenimsa Ome Ben Shalosh Shuros Shalosh Shnei Malbinim. An olive tree that is located standing in the midst of 3 rows trees that are separated from each other by 2 strips of land. So you have 3 trees and a strip of land then 3 trees, and a strip of land, and 3 trees. Okay, so v'shachacho, and if the farmer forgot to harvest this tree, no shecha. It's not considered shecha because it was not forgotten to forget due to forgetfulness, but rather because it was hidden by the trees around it. So you're talking about the middle tree in all that. If you look in the over here, if you can see this, if over here, you have 3 trees here, a strip of land there, 3 here. So we're talking about this middle tree. Since that tree is in the middle and it wasn't it's surrounded by it was hidden by other trees around it, that's not considered to be forgotten. Oh yeah, my head is all messed up today. Forgotten. Okay. Continuing. So Zayish Yesh Sasayim. If an olive tree contains 2 sour fruit with shechacho, and the farmer forgot to harvest it, shecha. It's not shecha because 2 saw is too much to be considered shecha. It has to be under 2 saw. When was it said that that tree with irritation does not become shecha? This man shelo his and when the person harvesting the trees did not begin to harvest the tree with irritation. Like for example, you have like a new worker, and you want the new worker to build his way up in the company, in so you give him to work on the less important stuff first. Okay, so they'll work with the other trees first, which are not so chashuv. They get up to speed. You're not going to tell them to work on the most important project on day one. So we're going to save the best for last and do the other things first. So aval hiskabah, but if you began to harvest that tree, I feel even if it's even said if this tree with a reputation, such as an olive tree that drips oil when it's fruitful, I mean, it's dripping oil, and if you forgot to finish harvesting it, then then it has shift to it. You know, that's only applies once you start harvesting it. If you didn't start harvesting yet, then it's not considered shechah. Calls man sheyesh lo tachto. As long as the farmer has olives beneath the tree that still need to be gathered, I mean they fell off, he still wants to gather them. Yesh lo barosho, he has the right to go back and collect all the olives that were at the top of the tree because he's not done harvesting yet. If he's not done harvesting, it's not considered shechah. Meir says, "Mishetelech hamachle." What that until the workers that it's not considered shechut, it's still considered to be in harvest mode until the last worker who searches for all the hidden stuff has left. Only once all the workers had cleared out from that tree and they moved on to the next side is, once that happens, then the rest falls to shecha, and therefore you cannot go back for them. But until that point, it's still in harvest mode and they can continue. Moving on. We're talking about Peret now. Peret, as we discussed earlier in the Masechta, Peret is to grapes as Leket is to grain. It's like 1 or 2. So we start with Mishnah Gimel. Ezo Peret. What is Peret? No sheb b'shasa b'tzibur. If the grapes that fall during the harvest, meaning individual grapes that fall from the cluster when it's being picked, they must be left for the poor. So what does this mean? Hayabot there, someone was harvesting grapes. Akat says Esa Eshkol, he cut a cluster. Hushbach be'alim nafam yadol aretz. He got tangled in the leaves of the vine and fell from his hand into the ground, to the ground. The nifrat and grapes were separated from the cluster because of it. The separated grapes belong to the owner because they didn't fall because of the harvest. They fell because of getting tangled in the leaves, and therefore that's not peret. If someone leaves it, it puts a basket beneath the grapevine when he harvests the grapes in order to catch the grapes that fall, keep for himself. He is robbing the poor. But he shouldn't be do that. He shouldn't do that. That's for them. I was in Amar. I'll tell you, Olim. Do not violate the boundary of the poor. Do not withhold the poor what is rightfully theirs. These grapes belong to the Aniyim. So unless you're going to say that he's catching all the grapes in the basket to then give to the Aniyim later, that would probably be okay because they'll probably be safer in the basket that they're left on the ground to get stepped on. But he was doing it for his own benefit. Then it would not be acceptable. Ezehu, Ezehu, all of this. So, um, what's all of this? Now, all of this is to grapes as shikha is to grain. Shikha, as you said, is on bundles, and all of this is on clusters, whereas Peret is on individual grapes, and Leket is on individual stalks of grain. So all of those, we have a mission about that. Ezu alulus, what type of grape cluster is an alulus, which must be left to the poor? Koshe ein lo kesef lo nated. Any cluster that has neither shoulder, meaning those many bunches of grapes that usually cover the top of the cluster's stem, nor dripping. The many individual grapes usually extend from the lower part of the stem. If a cluster is so undeveloped that it lacks the formation of grapes, it is odorless and must be left for the poor. Im yesh kasef or not taste about bias, but if a cluster is either shoulder or dripping, it is not considered odorless and belongs to the owner of the vineyard. If there's a doubt whether a cluster has these characteristics, it belongs to the poor. If you don't know, better to give it to the Indian. Continuing, all the Oleles, we're in the middle of Mishnah Dalit. Oleles should be our kuba. If an Oleles is on a loaded branch that also contains fully developed clusters, in the correct system, the Oleles is close enough the other clusters that it is cut from the vine together with the other clusters that he cut at once, Arehi Shabal Bayis, and it belongs to the owner of the field. Being love, Arehi Shalanim, and if not, then all this if it's too far from the other clusters, then it belongs to the poor. Garger Yechidi, Yehuda Omer Eshko, Chachamim Omer Oleles. And so if instead of small bunches, individual grapes make up the top of a cluster, and these grapes rest on one another, if Yehuda Omer Eshkol, they are considered, if Yehuda says they are considered to be a normal cluster, and they belong to the owner, Chachamim Omer Oleles, but Chazal say it's Oleles, it must be left to the Aniyah. Okay, moving on, Mishnah Hay. Hameda begafanim, Geshu meda besof shalo, Ken humeda b'shalaniyim, Divrei Yehuda. If someone is thinning out his grapevine, meaning like he did the same thing he did for the other produce, he's ripping out some vines in order to allow the rest to grow better, to give them more space. Just as he thins out his own vines, so he thin out those of the poor. Mean the extra vines that even if they contain the other list, he can still thin them out. This is according to Yehuda. Rabbi Meir Omer B'Shalohu Rashai V'Ena B'Shai B'Shalani. No, Rabbi Meir says he can thin out his own vines. He's not allowed to touch the ones of the poor people. Um, they're not considered. They are not considered partners in the vineyard. Rather, they must be treated as the person who purchased parts of the vineyard. Therefore, he can't touch that which does not belong to him. Okay. Um, when we talk about trees, we have to remember that the first 3 years of a tree's life is called orla, and all of the fruit of the first 3 years, if there is any fruit of the first 3 years, is usser, 100% usser. You cannot eat the fruit of the first 3 years of a tree in Eretz Yisrael. I think it's Eretz Yisrael. I think orla only applies in Eretz Yisrael. I'm not sure. The fourth year is called Revai, meaning fourth. And similar to Ma'aser Sheni, during the fourth year, the owner must bring the fruit to Yerushalayim and eat it there. If you can't do so, like Ma'aser Sheni, he can redeem it and bring the money, and that's fine. Yeah, it follows the same rules as Ma'aser Sheni. So Mr. Vav starts off Karam Revai, the fourth year produce of a vineyard, which is Revai. Shammai says, Ein lo chamesh, ein lo beer. It is not subject to the laws of the fifth or the law of the removal. Um, Meaning that if you're being poda the fruit onto money, you add on a fifth. It's like a tax or a convenience fee almost. That you add on a fifth more in the money than you did in the produce. So Beishameh says that does not apply to Karen Mavai, and Beisila Omim Yeshlo, and Beisila says that it does apply. Beishameh Omim Yeshlo Peret Yeshlo Oleilos Behaniim Podin Asma. Beishameh says that the fourth year produce of a vineyard is subject to the laws of Peret and Oleilos, just like the produce of any other year, and that the poor people they 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 collect those two manas in the and they may redeem it for themselves if they do not want to take it to Yerushalayim. Beisila says, "Kula lagas," all of it goes to the wine press, meaning that the entire fourth year harvest, including Peret and Oleilos, may be kept by the owner. He is allowed to put all the grapes in the wine press to turn them into wine without leaving any for the poor. He then redeems the wine or takes to Yerushalayim. Mr. Zion, Kerem Shekulo Olelos. A vineyard that is entirely made up of Olelos, that is any clusters that are undeveloped. The Reelezer Omer, the Balabayas, Reelezer says that everything belongs to the owner. The Rekiva Omer the Aniyim. The Rekiva says that everything belongs to the poor. Amar Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says the pasuk says in um, Kedoshim. Let's bring the pasuk up here. Perek Karmechalos Lekilani Laget Tazosam. The Karmechalos Olel. Sorry. Hold on. Kedoshim 1910. Basically, I don't have the pasuk in front of me at the moment, but the pasuk says that when you harvest your vineyard, you shall not take the olos. This implies that the isser it applies only when you harvest your vineyard. Im ein batzir inayin Oleilos. If there is nothing for you to harvest, then where would the obligation of giving Oleilos to the poor come from? So if it doesn't produce anything, you're not giving it to them. Amar Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva says to Rabbi Eliezer, the karma chalos ola. The Torah says you shall not take olus on your vineyard. Afilu kulo olulus. Even if the vineyard is entirely made up of olulus, and there are no non olus to harvest, that you cannot keep them whatsoever. They belong to the aniyah. Mishnah questions of Akiva in Cain. If that's the case, the owner can never take the olulus, even if we make up the entire vineyard. Why is it said? Why is it say in the Varim, when you harvest your vineyard, you shall not take the olus, which applies to the law that the law of olus applies only when there is a harvest. Which the answers, aim olus kodem from my butts here. According to Akiva, the Torah mentions the harvest, teaching the law that the poor have no claim on the olus before the time of the harvest. They didn't do the harvest yet, they cannot touch it. I heard yesterday or last night that you look at the psukim in Kedoshim, that it starts off Kisechale Kisix Uvekutzechem es Kitzir Ars Losechem Pasadech right? It starts off with the plural, that when you reap the harvest of your land, that's the plural. Then it switches into the singular. Like so, tzaddicha is singular. It's also in the singular form. Why is it switching from plural to singular? So it's to show that even a person who feels that the crop is not sufficient and he can't give the tax because it's can't give the man as because it doesn't apply to him. We say no. We're talking exactly to you. You still have to give it, and the Torah was talking to you in the singular form after it addressed everything in the plural, the general mitzvah. Mishnah Ches, the lesson for today. Hamakdish karmo ashelo nodu bo ha-olilos. Ein ha-olilos la'aniyah. Someone's makdish, he consecrates his vineyard to the base of this treasury before the olives can be identified. Then that's when the clusters are too small to tell which ones will develop properly and which will not. And ha-olilos la'aniyah. Then the olives do not belong to the poor people. Because by the time they become olives, the vineyard belongs to Hektish, and Hektish does not pay olives. We should know about how olives. If a person is marked his vineyard after the olives can be identified, olives and everything else goes to the base of Mikdash, but the olives go to the Nim because they were already identified before he was makdish his field, his vineyard. Rabbi Yossi says that the vineyard was makdish after the olives were recognizable, although the poor may take the olives, yet nu schar gedolov the hektish. He must give hektish the value of the growth from the time they were makdish until the time they were collected. So that basically this does not lose out. Ezu he shicha ba'aris. What is considered shicha in the case of a trellised vines that spread across wooden frames? What point is a grape considered to be forgotten in such a vineyard? Kosh yachal lipshot as yado that. when the harvester forgets a grape and moves far enough that he can no longer stretch out his hand and take it. However, as long as he can still reach the forgotten grape, it's not considered shikha. Since these vines are all intertwined, the farmer is not considered to have finished with the vine until he has moved so far they cannot reach it. Rugolios Mishiyavod Amen. And with regards to vines spread out on the ground, if a garden grape is shikha as soon as the farmer passes it. And if he's close enough to stretch out his hand and really reach it, here each vine is distinct and separate. Once the harvester moves past the vine, he hasn't finished with it, and he has finished with it, and its forgotten fruit is shikha. That is the end of Mishnah's Perek Zion. I apologize. I did use a lot of the notes in the Mishnahs for this year. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be more well rested and can prepare a little better. Have more chidushim to tell you, but not without using so much of the inside notes. Okay, let's start the recording. Have a wonderful day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. Eastern Time.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Yitzie.